At the end of the day, right now, we are in an energy management crisis, which is why burnout is happening. We don't know how to manage our energy appropriately. We are all running sprints when we know we're in a marathon. We're going, oh, well, I'll figure it out later. Instead of, oh my gosh, this is a long way to go. What's my race? What's my pace? What's my strength?
My name is AJ Bubb, your host. Welcome back to Facing Disruption, the show where we explore the intersection of technology and humanity, focusing on ways to become a better leader, a better expert, and overall a better person so that we can face disruption together. Quick warm welcome and thank you to all of our listeners, as well as our sponsors, MXP Studio and Convia Studio. As always, I invite you to subscribe and join in the comments after the episode where we'll be continuing the conversation. And I finally made that ask up front, which I always forget to ask. So please enjoy the episode. Today, we're tackling a topic that's increasingly relevant. We've done a couple topics similar to this around burnout, EQ over IQ, the changing demands on leaders and subject matter experts, and generally just people who are trying to do their job, especially in this fast-paced AI-driven world. And one of the things that connected my guest and I is the articles that are coming out that are saying that, hey, AI is leading to accelerated burnout. So with that, I wanted to introduce our guest, Kelsey Waldrop. Seasoned expert in leadership development and strategy, Kelsey brings a unique perspective on navigating this landscape beyond just reactive chasing into intentional strategic leadership. We also worked together at Accenture for a while, though we haven't figured out if we crossed paths or not, but we were very close to each other, orbiting wise. So with that, let's dive in. Kelsey, I would love to get a little bit of your background, and then we have a lot to talk about today.
We do. And so, AJ, I'm thrilled to be here. So thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited about this conversation. It's a topic that I'm extremely passionate about. It's so relevant. So I'll just do a really quick kind of intro on me. So as you mentioned, my background is in strategy and transformation. I spent over 2 decades with one of the largest and most prestigious consulting firms in the world. And I was really focused on how do organizations navigate large-scale change, innovation, transformation. And what I really became interested in over that time wasn't actually the strategy itself. It was the people who were making the decisions. What differentiates the leaders who succeed versus those that struggle or fail? What was the difference? And so working across industries, working with hundreds of senior leaders, here's what I figured out to be true. The smartest, most experienced, most strategic leaders in the world, when they are faced with uncertainty or disruption or crisis, will fail when they are constantly overwhelmed, when they're constantly second guessing themselves, or when they're trying to do everything on their own. So what I'm seeing right now is that AI has not created a new leadership capability issue or problem. It's created a leadership courage challenge. And so leaders today can do exponentially more than they've ever done before. They have more information, they have more tools, they've got more advanced technology. But instead of making things easier, abundance is driving this cognitive overload, decision fatigue, and the burnout that you mentioned. So my work is really about helping leaders to make high stakes decisions in environments that are uncertain and when the path isn't clear necessarily to move forward. So it's really about helping leaders to separate signal from the noise, get acutely focused on what really matters, and then build the courage that they need to lead in this environment.
I love that. And I feel like this is going to be talking to me directly a lot because as a leader starting my firm, starting this new product that we're launching next week, I'm running into the same problem. The leaders have to delegate, and it's hard to delegate, right? This is a universal challenge that you have to learn. And what I'm finding is because I was a builder, because I was on a product, because I was a leader, I could do things really fast.
Yeah.
And it's faster for me. Like the delta between explaining what I need and getting it done by myself using AI is so small that I do it myself, which is why I'm sitting in my chair today, because I'm tired. So I have to be more intentional about delegation. And it's almost like, oh, do I have to? Yeah, you still have to do it. So I am super interested in this because AI was supposed to come in and make our lives easier. And I feel like we're in this AI tsunami right now. And that's what you and I were talking about, like just opportunity and overload. Yep. Like, what are you seeing? What is going on? Why is this becoming an overload?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. We always say, well, indecision is lack of information. Well, now we have so much information that the ability to discern and to find the signal in the noise is more challenging than ever. And, there's kind of a framework around this that says, how do I cultivate the courage to lead differently? And how do I cultivate the courage to build a general of army? Whether it's solopreneurship of, how do I outsource or just leverage the gig economy that is out there that is quite amazing? Or when you're a leader in an organization, how do I build trust and collaboration across my team so that new ideas can come to the surface? And what it really comes down to, and there's kind of 4 levels of courage, and we can talk about them. But first, it's just the courage to pause. So as leaders, as business owners, we are running faster than ever. It feels like we are constantly behind. And so one of the most significant challenges, that's the thing that a lot of leaders aren't doing that's creating the challenge, is the courage to pause. We're not moving from crisis to crisis. We're not using project to project. We are taking the pause to get crystal clear. What am I trying to do? What is success? How am I going to do it? And I always revert back to the playing to win game. What game am I trying to win? Because the overabundance of information says we are playing football with soccer rules. And so when the paradigms have shifted, that pause becomes exponentially important to understand what game it is that we're trying to play in order to have the confidence to begin to delegate, because we can do, doesn't mean we should do.
Ooh, I really like that. So let's start with a pause. I remember one of my early episodes with my good friend Charlie Gibson. We were talking about burnout, and he actually went through these exercises of pausing. So maybe, I don't even know what day it is, but I'm going to take a deep breath and try to pause. I think it's Wednesday. Yeah,
I listened to that podcast actually, and it was great. Because I don't know about you, but most leaders, you tell us to pause and take a breath, and we're like hyperventilating breath. It's not easy.
Yeah, it's not easy, but we have to. Okay, so this overload of information, we don't know the signal from the noise. And then, let's dig into more the game that we're playing, because it seems so dumb. Come on, you have to know the game that you're playing. How could you not if you're a leader? But you're right. Like, why is that such a struggle to know the game that you're playing?
Yeah, for sure. Well, and again, why is it such a challenge to pause? Because in order to pause, we have to know what's the purpose of the pause, right? And the purpose of the pause is to find the clarity, because that's where confidence comes from. And confidence comes from the examination of the evidence, and that takes time. So, to your question of how do I not know what game it is that I'm playing, what assumption is that baked in? Am I still playing the same game, and has the field and the rules changed? And with AI, everything has changed. So we are not evolving a model, we are reinventing a model. And there's exponential opportunity in that, which create both opportunity, but also some really unique challenges. And when we're running with an assumption that things have been done a certain way, and that's what's made us successful, and this is where a lot of leaders even struggle in leading their organizations, we can't win that way. We're in a new paradigm. And so the pause is just the time and the confidence and the courage, by the way, which is why I say we have a courage problem, to say, in this world that is running so fast, I know that it is not about falling behind. It is about strategically and intentionally taking those pauses, because even if the game seems the same, we're keeping score a different way. And then my players have changed.
Could you give an example of a situation where a leader didn't know the game that they were playing? I would love to ground it in something where our listeners could say, okay, that's what it feels like.
Yeah, for sure. I work with a lot of marketing executives, right? And so the game, that they are often playing is consumer insight. How do we gain market share? How do we keep customers, buying our products? And where I see a lot of big organizational leaders struggling is they've gotten so large and they are relying on legacy kind of ways of operating. Accenture is one of them, right? That says, when you are an elephant, it takes time to pick up your foot and to move. And so the game, is less about legacy, reputation. It's less about what have we done in the past that's worked. And it's all about, we're in a new model where, influencer and indie brand are coming out with new products all the time. And we can send them for free and people can become influencers. We don't need to pay a marketing department. So therefore, what game is the marketing now playing? They're playing a new game where products come out faster. Customers want different things. They buy differently. They're buying through new channels like TikTok and Instagram and et cetera. And so how does that shift our message? How does that shift our model? How does that shift even our organizational design? Are we too big to respond? And so that's what a lot of the shifts I'm seeing. Those are big decisions. These are not small things. So we can take it at the macro and the micro level. But when we say, what does success look like? So what game am I playing? How am I going to win? And what infrastructure and support do I need to put around it in order for it to be successful? Those are all critical decisions. And this is where the decision overload becomes. And this is where the burnout starts to happen. Because, oh my gosh, there's so much.
Yeah, I like the anecdote you mentioned about the time it takes to move the elephant. So this is something that I was actually talking with a former colleague from Amazon earlier. And we were talking about the times that I experienced burnout during my corporate career. And I was thinking about it. It's like, okay, so what drove that burnout and how was it different than, let's say, the overwhelm that I'm feeling now? And honestly, looking back, it was the organizational friction that drove the burnout, not the work that we're doing. And yeah, having this legacy process of making decisions, I'll say this a little bit jokingly because obviously marketers don't market, but what's a marketer going to do who markets faster? If the organization doesn't make approvals faster, right? Yeah. You just end up with a backlog. I usually use the joke, what are organizations going to do with their engineers that can engineer faster, right? Because the problem wasn't that they couldn't engineer fast enough. The problem was it took forever to get the approval on the design, on the sprint, on the colors, on this. And it's like, okay, so now what are we doing? We're just going to give you a bigger backlog. Yeah. So that, I think, feeds into the courage to lead, because you have to make meaningful decisions faster. Let's think about that. Are the decisions as long-standing as they used to be? Where's the fear of courage coming? Where is the lack of courage coming from?
Yeah. The lack of courage is coming from lack of clarity, and it's coming from lack of conviction in decisions, and that also is the courage to have discernment. What do I say no to? And I think that's one of the greatest challenges, especially in the AI era, because we have so many options. And so part of the pause is, what parameters do I need to put around the decisions that I make so that I can confidently make them? And how much courage do I have to say, this failed, let's pivot? And so part of it too is this evolution from a hero leadership model, which says there's one person at the top, and we've heard this story so many times. If you think about the great CEOs, they are turnaround CEOs that came in and, according to the media, single-handedly saved organizations. And that model no longer works because information moves so quickly. There is the courage to find the clarity. There is the courage to seek evidence to build confidence. Then there's the courage to make decisions and to have discernment on what to say no to. And then there's the courage to create and cultivate a culture of collaboration that says, I don't know everything. And that challenges, especially in this, oh my gosh, the market is so tough. Everybody's coming for my job. AI is coming for my job. I have to be the hero in order to stand out. Versus the best thing that I can do is power up an organization and people that feel trusted and feel like their voice matters, so that I've got lots of voices in the room, including those that will tell me when I have a bad idea. And how safe is it for people to do that? And so we'll shift in what leadership truly means as we evolve into there are no heroes.
This sounds like a message I've been hearing for a while. I know that we talked about it with Lewis in the Inside Innovator episode, but then also, if you remember, the book Sprint came out from Google. How does Google do these sprints? And it was all about giving the team the agency to experiment and create, and the importance of being nimble. So on the face of it, this doesn't sound like it's a new requirement. Why is it coming up again now?
Because urgency is what instigates action. And so while this has been a leadership model for many years, there was no urgency to actually truly implement a lot of these things. I can partially do it. I can talk about doing it. We can build leadership development program that, says, let's empower our people. But because it's a level of urgency, there is now a action that says we need to be working with leaders. And this is why it's so great. I love my job, by the way, because what holds leaders back from turning over what they feel is power? Like, what is the personal, the inner narrative that says, I can't let this go? How do I develop the courage to let go and still, there's a decentralization of control, if you will. And there has to be governance. There has to be ways of working that are established and known so everybody's operating the same parameters. But this letting go to get more is a very personal leadership level of development. And again, how do I pause and focus on what's my internal narrative that's holding me back? I don't have time for that. I need to run an organization. I'll focus on my inner stuff later, instead of, it feels soft. However, what is holding back from people doing what the models have told us absolutely has to be done? What if my role as a leader is not to have answers? It's to ask the right questions to the right people and to have the courage to let go of control and to lead differently than I've ever done before.
Yeah, I feel that's really important what you just said, asking the right questions, right? You mentioned earlier, we can't discern the signal from the noise. We have so much information. We don't know what's right. We don't know what's wrong. We're relying on our intuition and our gut and our experience. And this is something that I talk about a lot. What I feel AI is best suited for is not to give you the answer. It's to look around, what are the questions I should be asking, right? Because that literally, the customer is where you're going to get your direction to some extent. Like there are moonshot bets, and I think moonshot bets are really important, but the little bets, get the data. Like, how fast can you get the data? And I wonder what are you seeing? Like, when we think about the legacy organizations, if we think about the leaders, let's call them the legacy types of strategic decisions that they made, they usually, in the past, were thinking in half years, multi-year strategic decisions. So is that also feeding into this lack of courage where they're still stuck in a mindset of the decision I make today is going to affect us next year, when the reality is like the decision you make today is going to affect us this quarter, and then we have to move on.
Yep. So here's the way that I like to think about this. It's an investment portfolio. And so we make short, medium, and long-term goals and action plans, right? So can we look out 10 years and say, what do we need to be doing? Harder than ever, because we don't know, right? And everything is shifting so quickly. And so what we do is say, let's take the big and make it small, which is what a former CEO at Accenture said to me once for a program, and I've just used it. How do I take the big and I make it small? Well, I focus on the data that I have, the decisions that are immediate, that need to be made, that will fund, both financially and trust and collaboration-wise, all the things, the big bets. So it's not an either or. It's a diversified portfolio of opportunity that is very intentionally designed to keep us relevant, keep us moving, keep us on the edge. And then what does the longer term look like? Well, we don't really know. However, when we have the courage to pause and say, what is the vision? Not what are the outcomes, not what are the specific strategic initiatives, but really what is the vision of what we see? Well, now we've got, and I the Wayfinder example, when we set out on a ship, we don't get a map that says, here's how to get to this island. You directionally know where you are headed. You follow the stars, which are your beacons of light, and that's how you navigate unknown waters. And so you take the big, you make it small, you focus on some near-term things that you have clarity and evidence of, and then you have to have a vision, and you have to have the confidence to pivot from that vision. And that confidence comes from that collaboration, that conviction, and that moment to pause and seek both clarity and confidence in the decisions that you are making. And so really, it's a lot of inner leadership work that then builds to, how do I lead myself? How do I lead my teams? How do I lead my organization? But if I'm not confident as a leader, I can't be confident in how I'm leading my organization either.
Yeah. So if I were to connect the dots, what I'm kind of seeing or hearing from you is a shift from the hero leader that knows the answer to the vision leader that empowers their team to get to the answer. Right? Is that a fair statement?
It is. And let me ask you, when I say that, when I say, okay, we're going to shift from a hero leader to a visionary leader, what do you think?
I feel, just hearing that, a part of me feels relief, right? Because what I'm building with Convia and with MXP, I have a vision in mind, and I really, truly don't have all the answers to get there. And this keeps me up at night. And hearing that is say, yes, you need to establish the vision so that we can directionally give the team direction so they can go find out. It makes a lot of sense. And I realize that that's what I'm forcing myself to do is I am investing in you going to find the answer in a way that we can pivot depending on the data. Amazon calls it 1- and 2-way door decisions, right? A 1-way is you broke ground on a data center, you're making the data center. A 2-way door is the little decisions that come up to get there. I think that's really important. And I'm thinking back, there's definitely leaders that I can call back on that led with vision. Pierre, back in our Accenture day, man, I miss Pierre. He was amazing. But he had a vision. Every company is going to be a digital product company. I think he put a lot of bets in place to say, go find out. Yeah.
And Pierre is the perfect example. I use Pierre often in my talks and in my client work, and especially his work on diversity, right? I mean, he didn't have a vision that half of his leadership team was women, half were not. He had a vision that his daughter would grow up in a world where she had every opportunity that was possible, and that was his why. That was his purpose. And it wasn't about a metric. It wasn't about an outcome. It was truly about a vision that drove every decision that he made. And that's why he inspired so many of us and why we still talk about him. And that's a great example of a visionary leader and how impactful they can be. Because occasionally people are like, yeah, visionary leader, like, woo, woohoo, like go hug a tree. But really, visionary leaders get people on board. We will follow them to the end of the earth because there's trust and we believe in that vision. And so part of this too is the courage to be visible and the courage to make that vision visible for people. It doesn't stay inside of us. We share it. And that can be scary too. What if my vision is wrong? What if it doesn't work out? And that's why, again, that coming back to clarity, why am I doing it? It's not about an outcome, really. It's about something bigger than that. And then our decisions become easy. And it becomes easy to say no. And we put the right people around us and trust that they will help guide us along the way. And we're open to pivot.
Yeah, really interesting. And we see visionary leaders all the time in the great things that they do. And they also bounce back from failure. I hate the term failure, right? It's not failure. It's success with extra steps, right? You're on a journey and getting there. And then I love what you mentioned about diversity. It's a shame that word has become so politicized. So let's call it broad skill set teams. I don't care what we call it, but the idea is the same, right? You get people with different experiences and different opinions, and they could provide different value. That's the whole cross-functional team idea. Are you seeing a shift towards more of that, less than that? How is AI playing into the bias life cycle there? Life cycle is probably the wrong word, but the biases within individuals.
I mean, that's a really tough question, right? That is a very, very tough question.
I'm throwing the tough questions out
I was going to say, like, I'm going to go on a little bit of a riff here, right? And again, we don't know. So here's been my experience. My husband and I have occasionally used ChatGPT to settle an argument. And when he goes to ChatGPT, his version that he's going to feed, he's right. And ChatGPT backs him up and gives him evidence and just pumps him up for that argument. I go to my version and I get my answer because I have been feeding it certain information. And so the fallacy of AI is it is based on prompts, right? And then it fills in gaps. And we're going to really go there. It is by design a dopamine feeder that builds us up. You are right. Yeah, it's a great idea. Let's make this even better. Here's an idea. And so we start relying on an AI that has been created on our own neural pathways. So we don't diversify that. We are only going to get answers that fit a flawed model. And so like even, and that, again, this is the trouble with using one particular AI model, but then how do we decide amongst all of them? But really, truly, if we are to get decisions and we are to get outcomes, we have to be careful. And this is why data and security is so relevant. We have to have diversity of input in order to have complete pictures and information on the output. And otherwise, we're putting ourselves in a pretty risky situation.
When you say security, what do you mean by security?
What goes in, what comes out, how reliable is the data, and who gets that data, right? Who has access to that data and who has access to what's going into our systems as well. Bad data in, bad data out. And that, not good or bad in a judgment way, but again, the system is designed to be based on our input. And so we have to make sure there's diversity of thought, diversity of input, and that we are aware of where we are pulling from and why, from a data stability and information integrity perspective.
I like what you said, we are aware. And I want to dig into that. We could go on our tangent on you have to be aware, right? One of the things that I'm really seeing is the resurgence of the role of the expert generalist, the person who has, we're going to use diverse. This whole episode is about diversity now. So, we lost probably no listeners, which is great. So the broad skill set enables you, because AI is empowering us to do so many things that we're not classically trained on. And, we talk a lot about AI slop, and what is AI slop coming from?
Mm-hmm.
It's coming from you producing something that you have no idea what good looks like, right? So are you seeing this need now that the value of somebody who has that diverse experience, who can speak marketing, engineering, product, customer centricity, like, are they becoming more important than ever? Is it not really changed? Is it too early to tell?
Those are your CEOs of the future. And so, when we kind of look at and when we get to a kind of leadership and career progression perspective, we kind of look at all these college students that are coming out and they don't have jobs because AI has replaced.
I worry about that.
Entry level. But, and we're evolving, right? And so again, there's not this, so we shift to, it's not a scarcity mindset. It's a juggling of, and I always call it the Yahtzee game, right? So we play Yahtzee and we throw our dice on the table and we go, okay, we want to keep that and try to make a hand. And we pick up our other dice, then we throw again. We may be making a totally different hand. And the next one, or we may be still going on the same hand, but we're constantly evaluating what is working, what is still relevant. And so that's why, again, that pause, and it's not a one-time pause, becomes so important. And so the generalist, right, it becomes how much courage do I have to surround myself with information, with people, with ways of thinking that allows me to capitalize. And so CEOs of the future are going to have to be able, and they already are, marketing. The role of marketing is changing, right? It's no longer how well do I understand the customer, it's how well do I understand our supply chain and our products and our, even our man-machine organizational design. And so the beauty of that is there's synergies to be found. There is patterns and recognition that can be found. This is what AI is so great at, is finding the threads. And so our leaders of the future have to be able to find the threads across multiple dimensions. And what we'll see is there really is synergy in there. And so I don't discredit the expert model. I do think we should have aware experts that surround themselves with information, people, and ideas that feel distinct but are actually connected.
I love that. I want to touch real quick on the folks coming out of college, right? Because you work with a lot of executives, but you've also done a lot of work around development and especially leadership development. What is your advice for people who are coming out of college, seeing the landscape and saying, I have no idea where to start?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. And I'll be honest with you, it's why I stick with leadership, because I don't know. It's a really, really tough question. However, I do have a 13-year-old and an 11-year-old, and that I'm thinking about their future. And we can even go into this. I'm thinking about the education system that they're in, and is the education system preparing the next generation for a new world where where we have to think differently. Instead of being taught to sit in classrooms and fill out worksheets and take tests on standardized answers, that's not a skill they're going to need in the future. And so, I mean, again, I think we have to think a little bit differently, not where do I fit, but what is the broader landscape and what does that mean for a career? Careers might look extremely different than they have in the past. It's a paradigm shift. And, I go back to education, right? So what are we really teaching? What are they really learning? And are we teaching patterns? Are we teaching effective communications? Are we teaching ethics and compliance, which, by the way, was an elective for me? I don't know about you, but I took it because I was in economics, but not everybody gets ethics training. And here's how we act right in the world. It's going to shift. Just like, we are in the fourth industrial revolution. These are the same fears. It's on steroids. Yep, it's industrial revolution on steroids. And I do think that there's a gap, there's a cognitive gap between what I knew and what I know. And that's hard. So I do understand. I also think maybe we don't they have people think that they're going to start their careers at 18. Maybe there is more of a mentorship, apprenticeship model that becomes relevant. I don't know the answers, but I do know the old textbooks don't work.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I agree with this approach of mentorship, apprenticeship. You have to have the applied skills, right? You can get the theory, you have to learn how to think, but you also have to learn what does good look like. And, going back to this idea of AI slop, are we just going to regress to the mean where everything is just, because that's all anybody knows? I don't know. But that's also opportunity. Like, that's where the visionary comes in, to break the mold.
I'm a history person. I love history because that's where the patterns are. And I'll just give you an example with my daughter of where I potentially see us headed, which is we are on a pendulum. And we have swung to speed, to more, to almost overindulgence of information and opportunity. Like, we are in a period of abundance, and that's no longer a good thing. So while we've swung one way, the vision that I see is a strong desire by the younger generations to come back to simple, to decomplexify the world, careers, even how we do business. What I'm seeing in terms of business is a middle market economy that is flourishing. It's no longer at the big, and the small organizations trying to keep up these massive organizations. There's a middle market where people are doing business based on relationships, and there's trust in that. And so, my hypothesis is if we look at history and we go back a little bit, and I'll just use the example. My daughter just got a landline. Her phone is called a tin can phone. It literally is a tin can that she can only call people who have tin cans, which are, the people in her class. And again, there's the governance. But it's simple. It's like, I don't want all this noise.
Yeah.
I need to find my signal. And so there's a message from me in there that says, let's keep it simple. Let's slow down. Let's consciously choose what makes sense. And maybe the pendulum needs to swing back to a little bit more simplicity, which again takes courage. Because what if I'm not running in the race anymore? What does that mean?
Yeah, that's particularly hard. The social pressures of being in the rat race. I mean, I got that early in my career before I joined corporate, when I was, on my first wave of entrepreneurship, that people would say, jokingly, when are you going to get a real job? And that's hard to hear. And now with the types of jobs that younger folks are getting, whether it be in the gig economy, whether it be something that isn't what would traditionally be defined as a career, they have to put up with that too. And the social media that says like, you got to be making this much by this age.
Yeah. Which is why my personal belief is that really, kind of deep work, I'm going to call it, right? But that exploration of who we are at the core, and that's at an individual level, and the same for businesses. If we examine the evidence, the signals are there. And I'll just really quickly use myself as an example. My dad was a CFO. My mom was a psychologist. The fact that I would turn into an executive coach that works with leaders on mindset and behavior, like, you probably could have guessed if you would have looked at the signal. And not everybody, has it that obvious, but part of it is if we really explore who we are, what we love, what we are good at, and we come back to that on a regular basis, we have confidence, we can make better decisions, and we can find the signal because we're focused. And I always say thoroughbreds run with blinders, because if they look around what race everyone else is running, they trip. It is catastrophic. And so knowing kind of what it is that we do and do well, and knowing that and having just kind of the mindset of that is needed in the world can keep us on a path and can keep our motivation, because at the end of the day, right now, we are in an energy management crisis, which is why burnout is happening. We don't know how to manage our energy appropriately. We are all running sprints when we know we're in a marathon. We're going, oh, well, I'll figure it out later. Instead of, oh my gosh, this is a long way to go. What's my race? What's my pace? What's my strength? And so a lot of this really is coming back to, we're talking about all these external things when the focus really needs to be a lot more on internal, and who we each are. And that's, we've just moved away from that to this very external focus. And so, especially for people that are leading organizations, that clarity of who am I, how do I lead, is what is required for the confidence to, again, let others make and help decisions. But that takes courage. It takes courage to take that pause, and it takes courage to take that examination. And the pause is the biggest part right now. We're just running at such a pace.
Yeah, and you mentioned pause was one of 4 key habits. What were the other 3?
All right, so we've got the courage to pause and to seek clarity, right? So there are 4 layers of courage. So like to find everything that we have been talking about. And then there is the courage to examine the evidence. So this is kind of, both from a personal leadership, from a team leadership, from an organizational leadership. It's finding the signal and the noise. What does the evidence point to? And when we gather all this evidence, we find the signal, we've got confidence. So the courage to pause and find clarity. It's the courage to examine the evidence of what's working and what's not. What are my strengths? What are my weaknesses, so that I can build confidence? And then there is the courage to make it visible. So whether it's to, I put it out to the world that this is my strengths, this is my skills, this is the work that I want to do. Whether it's an organization, I share it with my team, I share my vision, I allow others to see, to not weigh in on it, but to see what it is that I'm trying to do. And then there is the courage to have discernment. It's the courage to say no to what doesn't align to this very clear vision that I have, that's been crafted by examining the evidence, that, I was clear because I have a vision. And then the last piece, again, is this courage to cultivate a culture of collaboration. It's the courage to let others in, whether it be personally or professionally or organizationally.
I really like that. I'm just replaying it in my head a little bit. I could definitely see the courage to examine the evidence, because that's what's going to tell you if you're correct or wrong. Right? And I feel that there was this whole wave of fail fast. Everybody should embrace failure. I don't feel that we ever truly got over the societal pressure to not fail, especially in organizations.
Yes, especially the larger organizations, right? So the return on investment of allowing people to fail has to outweigh the cost, right? We have to bring the bottom up and go, well, if we fail, what are the consequences? And the return on that investment has to at least 10 times exceed the potential cost. And so we need to benefit, like, okay, we can fail a little bit, or we can fail a lot. And what safeguards do we have that says, okay, where's our net? And I work on this with personal leadership, right? What's your net? How big of a step can you take out into the unknown? Depends on the safety net that you've built underneath you, because you need to be able to see, here's how far I'm going to fall in order to take the step. Otherwise, it's not worth it, because I might plummet. Same with organizations. And so that, again, that's clarity. That's the evidence that we're gathering is, yes, I say that I want to fail fast, but what happens if I do? And that pre-mortem is where a lot of leaders don't want to pause. Let's not talk about that. That's not going to happen. No, really, what happens if this epically fails? What are we going to do? What's our workaround? What's the toll gates? Who are we going to bring in? They're like, that's going to work.
It's interesting you say that, because I've also been in a number of situations where we focus on the what if it doesn't work and forgot to ask, what if this is successful? And that's a whole other thing, because it's like, okay, what if this takes off and we have to scale at lightning speed, which is happening.
Right. Yeah. Indecision is always based on lack of information. So whether that be what is the output what that is worth making it, and what is the potential cost, and let's find the evidence that supports the hypothesis that this risk has been calculated and is worth it. And it's not that we need to take longer for decision making, right? That's called, like, tell any leader that and they will hang up on you right now, right? So, however, if we go all the way back, right, and see why are we making those decisions? What is it grounded in? And otherwise, we are on, we just built our house out of straw. And any uncertainty, any level of disruption is going to blow it down.
So let's tie that all the way back to the beginning, because we started talking about AI and information overload. So, when we think about leaders having to make decisions faster to get the signal from the noise, how can they, from an actionable standpoint, how can they start thinking about leveraging AI in that decision-making process?
Yeah. One, I think you surround yourself with a board of advisors, and they have different tools. They've got, they have deep knowledge of different areas, and you create space for them to collaborate. And so instead of, we move from hero leadership, right, to this not only visionary leadership, but also I've got generals in my army and they can go out and fight battles for me. It's not, I don't have to be in every one. So I think the actionable steps are going, where do I pause? Or where do I struggle to pause? What is the message? Like what is driving this incessant pace? And doing that pre-mortem, well, what would happen if I step back? Well, I might actually find the opportunity. I might actually find the signal to the noise. I might be able to go out to dinner on the weekends instead of, running down this rat hole that I'm in. So I think, the step number one is just to examine, when I say I need to take a pause, what's stopping me? What's the message, and how true is it? And what is the potential if I did take the pause? Because that all of a sudden is a strategic advantage and others don't have. Nobody else is taking the pause. I've got better decision making. I've got a team that's not burnt out and turning over. And so I think step number one is to say, where do I need to have some courage? And here's the number one question. I love this question. What are you procrastinating doing? What do you know you need to do but you're not doing? What feeling comes over? I don't want to do that. Where really are you struggling to get uncomfortable when the world demands comfort and discomfort?
And where can we use AI to accelerate this? What kind of, is it,
and we can
what's out there? Or is this not an AI problem?
It's an AI opportunity, right? So it's a great question. And we can use AI to say, based on what we have put in, where's their signal? Where's their risk? Where is their opportunity? We can literally use AI for just about anything. And we can also use AI if we go to that portfolio of investments. Where are the short-term, near-term certainty wins that we can leverage in order to invest our time, energy, money, thoughts into the bigger strategic initiative? And how, an AI can actually help us balance that portfolio. Like, where are we missing quick wins because we're chasing bigger things? Where are we out of balance? And so I think, helping to make some of those decisions. And what does my operating model need to look like? How do I empower the people around me? How do I create a culture of trust? These are, AI is actually a great leadership development coach, unfortunately for me, right? But actually, when I see the opportunity in that too. But there's nothing that we can't use it for. And I think the more we understand it, the better we can be at using it. And so that's the other thing I don't see the opportunity for many leaders to do, is to continue learning. And so I'd say, taking what is your learning plan? How much of that part of your leadership capability is bringing back a investment in learning?
I definitely see, back to what you were saying earlier about AIs being the dopamine hit and saying, yes, that's a great idea. What you just said about AI being a great coach, and that might not be great for you. The real world data, that gap between I've talked the theory and now I need to walk the walk, I think that's still, AI is not going to push you unless you are very sophisticated and intentional and receptive to it pushing you like a trusted advisor.
And
right?
here's what I
It's
would
kind of
say.
like that gap is still going to exist.
It is, which is why you should have a board of advisors, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we never put, our careers or our lives in one person's hand to tell us. And that's the other thing. That's discernment. Like, great, that is input. We still have to think critically. I'll ask the AI to write bios for me all the time. I'm like, yeah, not really. And I think that's the other thing, is building in time if AI is wrong. Because I think that's one of the biggest things that I did when AI first started. Like, I just kind of started trusting it with stuff. Like, this is great. And slowly over time, I stopped checking it. And all of a sudden, I put out a podcast and I was like, oh my God, that's terrible. Like, it had messed up everything. And so I think it's also just, building in the time to QA and remembering to think critically about things.
Yeah. And I think that this is all great. We're coming up at the top. Any topic, any thoughts that you have that we didn't cover, and, thoughts for the future. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, here's what I would say is the most strategic leadership decision that you can make is to pause, and think about the things that you find woo, or that you found woo in the past, right? Or soft in the past, and critically examine what do they really mean for you and your teams in the future? Because we are in a marathon. We are not in a sprint. And where are you making decisions that are based on short-term versus this is the new business as usual, and there's no such thing anymore.
No such thing as short-term.
No such thing as business as usual.
Business as usual. Got it.
Business as usual is non-business as usual. What does that mean? And be open to paradigm shifts, which means having people challenge you.
I love it. I think we're going to see a lot more disruption as we're trying to navigate all of these tools. Organizations are going to have to change, but at the same point, the optimist side of me says where there's chaos, there's opportunity. And I love what you said, going back to simplicity, because look at the SaaS market, and SaaS companies, their stocks are dropping. And I really believe a big reason for it is, you go and buy HubSpot and they have a whole suite of tools you're never going to use. It's like, I just need to track my pipeline. And now you could build that simple thing. And there's a market for that simple product for $15 a month. Like,
take the big and make it small.
Yeah. Simplicity just seems to be necessary also for making shorter decisions very quickly. Like, we need to make the decision and it needs to have a feedback, and then we have to move to the next one.
My coach always told me never waste a crisis. And maybe simple and easy, but we're uncomfortable with simple and easy. What if that's where it's at?
Oh, that's a whole imposter syndrome thing. Oh, we could get into that in another episode. Yeah. I mean, as experts, we want to appear as experts. You see that all the time. That's tough. Well, thank you very much. This has been great. For listeners, I really hope you have some inspiration. The biggest takeaway is, one of my biggest takeaways from this is, take a deep breath and pause. I think we all need to do that a little bit. And I think the second thing that I am really trying to do as well is, once you have that vision, put some blinders on and focus on the vision. I say that now is the best and worst time to be a creative entrepreneur. It's the best because you could do so much, and it's the worst because you could do so much.
Just because you can doesn't mean you should.
Yeah, exactly. And thank you all. Join us for the next episode and have a great rest of your week. Thanks again for joining.
Thank you so much, AJ. Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah. Take care.